Hey everyone, today we're starting directly with Avi Loeb's latest Medium post because this time the most important development is not a new image, not a new detection, and not the fact that 3i Atlas has already passed Earth. The key development is that Avi Loeb chose not to update the Loeb classification scale yet, and that decision itself is scientific, deliberate, and meaningful. So the first question we need to answer clearly is this. Is Avi Loeb declining to update the Loeb classification scale of 3i Atlas? The honest answer is no. He is not rejecting the scale, and he is not dismissing the object as uninteresting. Instead, he is deliberately postponing an update, and the reason for that delay tells us a lot about how science actually works. In his post, Loeb explains that the Loeb classification scale is not a label you change emotionally or in response to public pressure. It is a framework designed to measure confidence, not curiosity. It ranks how well an object's observed behavior can be explained by known natural processes, and it is meant to be updated only when the relevant data has been fully analyzed. 3i Atlas was originally placed around level 4 on this scale after its discovery in July. That position did not imply artificiality. It meant that the object displayed a growing list of anomalies that were not fully explained at the time, while still being most likely natural in origin. Since then, the number of identified anomalies has increased from 8 to 15. This is not a small detail. It means that instead of converging quickly toward a clean classification, the object has continued to exhibit behaviors that challenge simplified comet models. So why not update the scale now, especially after closest approach to Earth has already happened? Loeb answers this directly. The most important data that could justify a change on the scale has not yet been fully released or analyzed. Closest approach is not the end of the scientific process. In many cases, it is the beginning of the most critical analysis phase. Raw images, spectroscopic measurements, and jet diagnostics take time to process, cross-check, and interpret. Updating the scale before that analysis would not be cautious. It would be irresponsible. This is the first key scientific reason for the delay. Classification depends on understanding physical mechanisms, not timing milestones. The fact that 3i Atlas passed Earth does not automatically make it a normal comet. Orbital passage tells us nothing about composition, energy source, or exhaust physics. What matters is how the object behaved during that passage. And this is where the second reason becomes important. 3i Atlas did not behave like a routine comet. During closest approach, observers saw a persistent anti-tail jet, extending over enormous distances, pointing sunward. Such a feature is not impossible for comets, but its stability, collimation, and persistence raise questions about what physical process is driving it. Loeb points out that the decisive test is not visual appearance alone, but physics. If the jet is driven by sublimation of ices like carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide, then its exhaust speed should be limited to a few hundred meters per second. This is a well-understood regime. If measurements confirm this, then the natural explanation strengthens. But if the exhaust speed is significantly higher, or if the chemical composition does not match known cometary volatiles, then the natural model becomes incomplete. This is why Loeb emphasizes spectroscopy. Spectroscopic data can reveal what molecules are present in the jet, how fast they are moving, and how energy is being transferred. Without that information, updating the classification scale would be premature, because the scale is not about appearance. It is about physical explanation. This leads to the third reason Loeb gives for delaying an update. The Loeb classification scale is meant to move when confidence changes, not when speculation increases. At the moment, confidence has not yet shifted decisively in either direction. Some natural explanations remain plausible. Others are strained. But none have been conclusively ruled in or ruled out. This is an uncomfortable place for people who want answers quickly, but it is exactly where science must stay honest. Now, this is where an important misconception needs to be addressed. Many people assume that because 3i Atlas passed Earth without causing disruption, it must therefore be a normal comet. That assumption is incorrect. Harmlessness does not imply normality. Passing Earth without incident tells us about orbital dynamics, not about internal physics. 3I Atlas showed several features that remain unusual even after closest approach. Its jet maintained a sunward orientation. Its structure remained coherent. Its brightness evolution did not follow typical patterns. Its interaction with the solar environment appeared controlled rather than chaotic. None of these observations prove anything extraordinary, but together they justify continued scrutiny. This is why Loeb explicitly states that 3I Atlas is most likely natural, while simultaneously emphasizing that its behavior is not fully explained. Those two statements are not contradictory. Science often operates in that middle ground, where probability favors one explanation, but confidence is not complete. The Loeb classification scale exists precisely to capture that nuance. Another reason Loeb mentions for withholding an update is the possibility of future observable consequences. For example, if 3I Atlas were to release smaller fragments near Jupiter, or if anomalous emissions were detected later, that information would directly affect its classification. Updating the scale before knowing whether such effects occur would lock in a position too early. In other words, Loeb is keeping the scale flexible because the object itself is still revealing information. This is not avoidance. This is discipline. It is also worth emphasizing what Loeb is not doing. He is not escalating the classification. He is not downgrading it. He is not using the scale to promote a narrative. He is explicitly waiting for data. That waiting is the most scientifically important signal in the post, because if 3I Atlas were clearly normal, the scale would move downward confidently. If it were clearly anomalous in a way that defied natural explanation, the scale would move upward. The fact that neither move is justified yet tells us exactly where the science stands. And that is the message the audience needs to understand. 3I Atlas passing Earth does not close the case. It sharpens the questions. The object accumulated anomalies before closest approach. It displayed unusual behavior during closest approach. And the most decisive measurements are still under analysis after closest approach. This is why Loeb is declining to update the scale right now. Not because nothing happened, but because too much is still being understood. This is how responsible classification works. It resists pressure. It waits for measurements. And it moves only when confidence genuinely changes. So the correct takeaway from Loeb's post is not that 3I Atlas has been explained away and not that it has been elevated to something extraordinary. The correct takeaway is that the object remains scientifically interesting, partially unexplained, and worthy of continued analysis. That is not a failure of science. That is science doing its job. We may find that future data resolves the anomalies cleanly. We may find that it exposes new gaps in our models. Either way, updating the classification scale will make sense only when the physics is understood, not when the headlines peak. That is why Avi Loeb is waiting. And that is why this object, even after passing Earth, cannot simply be labeled as a normal comet and forgotten. Let me know what part of Loeb's reasoning you find most important to follow next. And if you are tracking 3I Atlas beyond its Earth encounter, stay with it. The most meaningful data often arrives after the moment everyone thinks the story is over.